Hi, dear students. A warm good morning to all of you. Today we're going to talk about biomolecules or the molecules of life. In the previous class, we had mentioned about what are living things and what are the characteristics of living things. And in this class, we are going to study what are these living things made up of, or what are the molecules which will commonly be found in these biomolecules. There is a cartoon on which has been created by our Amoeba sisters, and that's what I have shown here. And you can see that there are mainly four different molecules which are being found in all living forms. They will include nucleic acids, which are being made up of nucleotides, carbohydrates, which are being made up of sugar moieties, and every single carbohydrate or a single sugar moiety is referred to as a monosaccharide. In addition to this, we also have lipids, which are the fatty components of the cell, and we also have proteins, which are being in turn made up of amino acid building blocks. So, we are going to explore what are all these molecules and what are their basic compositions. If you look into a particular grape, you can find that it is having a skin, a skin which is consisting of various there are various components in that, various anthocyanins, pigments. These are all some pigments. And in the pulp, you can find it contains water, organic acids, sugars, and flavoring compounds. The seed, which has been made up of proanthocyanidins. Then the intermediate zone, which is made up of tartaric acid and sugar. The central zone, which is made up of malic acid, and there's also a sugar. The peripheral zone is made up of potassium plus oxidase, aromas, astringency, sugars, and acidity. These are all components of it. So, if you go to look into this particular single grape, you can see that in that itself there is a sugar present. Okay, there is organic acids present. There is water present. Then there are certain what do you say? There are malic acid, tartaric acid. These are all coming on, and various other organic acids which are coming under the category of what? They are coming under the category of fatty acids. So every living thing, okay, let it be a moving form or a plant or an animal or whatever it has been made up of different types of biomolecules. And even in this grape, you can see that it also contains, if you take a part of the skin of the thing, or if you take the grape acid itself, it is also composed of DNA. Okay, so the composition of a particular living thing is, or the it is mainly composed of all these biomolecules. So, as a whole, if you go to take a living organism, it is complicated and it contains a large number of different organic molecules. And you can see that even the smallest bacterial cell has 5,000 different organic compounds, which consist of 3,000 different proteins and 1,000 kinds of nucleic acids. If you go to take clay, which is a random, you can see that it is a mixture of about different types of chemical compounds. So that is a case. What you have to notice that every living form which we have is consist of different biomolecules, and we are going to learn about the different biomolecules which we have in living things. If you go to consider a mammalian cell, you can say 70% of it is water, 18% is proteins, 4% is carbohydrates, 3% is lipids, 0.25% is DNA, 1.10% is RNA, and 2% is enzyme and hormones, and 1% of inorganic ions can also be found. So, what is the key point of all these? Let it be a prokaryotic cell or let it be a eukaryotic cell. All these cells come from a common ancestor and they use the same kind of carbon-based molecules. But the cell function will get diverse, okay, depending upon the presence of nucleic acids, proteins, lipids, and sugars which have been present in it. But all of these cells come from a common ancestor, and they all have the same organic molecules, but they do different roles in different cells, and they will get diversified. Now, let's just name some chemical compounds found in the living cells using these atoms: carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. If you take hydrogen and water, oxygen, you get water. If you get carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen together, you can find a carbohydrate over here. So, in all the living cells, different compounds or different chemical compounds are being formed by different combinations of these atoms. Now, sometimes you can find carbon and hydrogen alone, CH4, methane, that is another compound. Okay, so CO2, that is carbon dioxide. So different chemical compounds are being formed by using different atoms and their different combinations. So if you go to consider the chemical composition of a cell, every cell is being made up of different elements. And these elements can be either essential elements, or some will be found in a very trace level, that is in a small level. They are referred to as the trace elements. But some of the elements will be very much essential. And they are called because large quantities of that is required for the production of various biomolecules. So they are called the essential elements. So the different types of elements of a particular cell will combine together, resulting in the formation of compounds. And these compounds can be organic or inorganic in nature. Organic and inorganic are the ones which will contain carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. You see, and so carbohydrates, proteins, lipids, and nucleic acids constitute the organic compounds. Or they can be inorganic, such as in the case of water. And each and every compound plays an important role in constituting the chemical composition of a particular cell. We know that if a particular cell is being dehydrated completely, what happens? The cell will lose its proper functional ability. So let's go into the details of it. So the essential elements which are being required in large amounts can include carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, calcium, potassium, phosphorus, sulfur, sodium, chlorine, magnesium. These are all required in large amounts, and they form the organic compounds of the zinc. As well as the inorganic compounds can also be formed by using this. And the trace elements are the elements which are needed only in small amounts in a particular living cell. So substances composed of only one kind of atom are referred to as the elements, and they cannot be broken down into the simpler substances. Now, what are the functions of all these elements in the animals and the plant cells? Carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, and nitrogen, they are being used in the synthesis of organic compounds like proteins, lipids, and nucleic acids. And sulfur, okay, both in the plant cells as well as in the animal cells, these are required. And sulfur is a component of some proteins. But sodium, it regulates the osmotic pressure in the cells, but it is not required much in the plant cells. And sodium is also help in the transmission of nerve impulses. If you go to consider magnesium, it is involved in the protein synthesis. It acts as a cofactor of some enzymes, and it is required in the synthesis of chlorophyll in the case of plants, and it activates the enzymes in the cells. So what you have to note is that every element has a particular function in, let it be in a plant cell or in an animal cell. Okay. So let's move on. And if you're going to consider phosphorus, phosphorus is formation of bones. Potassium is required in the muscle contractions as well as in the synthesis of carbohydrates in the plant cells. And chlorine is used in the synthesis of hydrochloric acid by the gastric glands of the stomach, as well as it is also needed for the photolysis of water during the light reaction of photosynthesis. So regardless of plant or animal cell, every element is being found to have some role in their particular function. And but the quantity of that which is being needed in every cell would be different, but they play a different role in different cells also. Now, the compounds, what are compounds? Compounds are formed by the combination of different elements, and they are chemically combined in a fixed ratio. and they can be organic compounds or they can be inorganic in nature. Organic compounds are the ones which contain carbon and hydrogen, and they are being associated with living organisms. And the inorganic compounds, they will not contain carbon and hydrogen, okay, and they are associated with non-living organisms. And water is an example of it. But organic compounds includes carbohydrates, proteins, lipids, nucleic acids, and all that. Now, what are the importance of these chemical compounds in the cell? Carbohydrate is a primary source of energy. That is, when we eat something, carbohydrate, this thing, our cells are getting a source of energy. Now, what is a lipid? A lipid is a fatty substance. Okay, it is also a source of energy, and it will also provide physical protection to the major organs in the body. Now, we have different organs, and the organs are also being protected by these lipids. And the lipids are also a major constituent of the plasma membrane. What is a plasma membrane? You know, the cell has an outer covering, and the outer covering of it is also being made up of lipids. And a lipid is also a fat soluble. It is also a solvent for the fat soluble vitamins. Solvent is something in which something will get dissolved, and the fat soluble vitamins get dissolved in the lipids. Now, coming to the proteins are the ones which helps us to build new cells. Okay, any new any what is it, dead or damaged tissue, that has been grown or it has been renewed with the help of the particular proteins. And proteins are required in the synthesis of enzymes, antibodies, and hormones, and they form structural components and important components of the plasma membrane. They are also being involved in the synthesis of hemoglobin. And if you go to consider nucleic acids are other ways of, they are of two types, DNA and RNA. They store the genetic information. Let it be a large tree, let it be a small virus, or let it be a bacteria, or let it be an animal. Everything contains nucleic acids, and all the information, all the genetic information regarding what is genetic information, all the informations on the genes which have been present in it, these are all been present in the nucleic acids. And coming to water, water is a biochemical, it plays an important role in the biochemical reactions in a transport medium. It is a solvent. It helps to maintain the osmotic balance, the turgidity, and the continuous flow of water up the stem to the leaves. What do you mean by osmotic balance? Osmotic balance is a balance in which the water content has been maintained. Okay, and so the salt, the wouldn't be loss of water, and the cell will be retained functionally. So it provides the support to the structure of the cell. It provides moisture to the respiratory surface. It maintains the body temperature. It helps in lubrication and all that. So these are the some of the important chemical compounds within the cell and what are their main functions. Now, if you go to consider a cell, so the cell will consist of elements as well as compounds, and the elements can be divided, as I told you, as essential elements as trace elements. Essential elements which have been found in large amounts, and the trace elements which have been found at less than 0.01% of the body mass. And the elements will combine together, resulting in the formation of compounds, and the compounds can be divided again into organic and inorganic. Organic compounds should contain the compound carbon, element carbon, and carbohydrates, proteins, lipids, and nucleic acids are examples of that. And inorganic compounds do not contain carbon, and water and mineral salts are some examples of that. Okay, and let me just talk about water. Water is the most important substance in the cell, and it comes from different places now, either from the condensation of primary atmosphere, or we say that from the release of gases from the earth interior or from the extraterrestrial region. But you should remember that water accounts for about 70% of the cell's weight. And most of the intracellular reactions occur in an aqueous environment, and oceans are being considered to be as the beginning of life on the earth, and life is dependent on the property of water. And you can also see within it we have a small, within the cell we have small organic molecules, sometimes 30 carbon atoms together, of about with a molecular weight of about 100 to 1000 kilodalton, and they are usually found free in the solution, and they can either form different macromolecules as and they might form a source of energy in various intracellular molecules also. And these organic molecules are again, as I told you earlier, sugar, fatty acids, amino acids, and the lipids. Fatty acids join together to form the lipids. The amino acids join together, resulting in the formation of proteins, and nucleotides are there. So, this is the basis of all the biomolecules which have been found in the living things. Thank you for now.